Like, I was doing her nails, and it went from like one time of them having nothing happening, no kids. And then all of a sudden, she was like, oh, the next time, by the way, I have like 3 kids in my home. And then the next time it was 2 more. And so I felt like she was like this instant family sort of movie. And okay, we will go ahead and get started. So this is my friend Rebecca. She has been a friend for a very long time. I don't
A
even...
long time. Well, I went to beauty school with Kaylani, so I've known you since then.
Yeah, which was how long ago?
Like 12 years ago?
That's been a long time.
It's like been 12 years.
And I started doing your nails.
Yep. Well, yeah, right after school, I think.
Yeah. So, she is one of the main reasons that I got interested in foster care. Like, I was doing her nails, and it went from like one time of them having nothing happening, no kids. And then all of a sudden, she was like, oh, the next time, by the way, I have like 3 kids in my home. And then the next time it was 2 more. And so I felt like she was like this instant family sort of movie, and it was so intriguing to me, and I wanted to know every detail. I wanted to know everything that was happening, and it was just something that was so interesting to me. And I loved that she was so willing to help all these kids, and it was like, you were seriously such an inspiration to me. So why don't you go ahead and like introduce yourself, and then we'll get into your foster story.
Okay, so I am Rebecca Roberts. My husband and I have been married for almost 11 years, and we both grew up in Idaho in the same community, but we didn't go to school together. We met after beauty school, and so we got into fostering. We struggled for about 9 years to have kids of our own, and that kind of we got to the point of like IVF or adoption. We actually weren't considering foster care. And then so I worked with a friend who had fostered her nephew and then later adopted him. So I kind of got talking to her about it, and then was really intrigued, like Chelsea was, about fostering and like what's involved. I didn't really grow up knowing much about fostering, or was even really aware of like kids in foster care.
And how you do it, and how
or like what it takes. And so after talking to her, I convinced my husband, which didn't take much. He was like, okay, let's do it. And so
like instant kids.
Yeah. And so we knew, actually, we joked when we were dating, my in-laws went to Ecuador, and we were engaged at the time, but we were like, bring us home a baby, So I feel like we always knew we wanted to adopt. We just didn't know that fostering would come in to play, like getting to adoption. And that was kind of cool to look back on. But so, yeah. Anyways, that's how we got started. We went and did our classes. We're actually from Idaho. I know you live in Utah.
Yeah, so
it is a little bit different.
Yeah, I think the trainings are the same. So you do the same trainings, but as far as like state to state regulations, they differ slightly. So whatever state you're from, you'll have to check, because whatever we say may not be applicable to you where you live.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, so how long when you start, I know your first foster care process was a little different than mine, because I just decided to do it for whatever kid, and I was open to anything, and yours was a little bit different. So tell me why you had decided to do the foster care when you did, and what happened with that.
So we were actually contacted by a family friend who, her sister was pregnant, and she'd had her little boy previously removed, and so we kind of got contacted in that way. So when we were doing our fostering classes, we were kind of signing up to take on a family, like a kinship is what they call it in foster care. So you're like referred by the family to care for this child that has been removed.
And you get the first choice of that before any other foster family, right? Okay.
Yeah. And so ours was a little bit different because we went through our foster classes kind of blindly, actually, because we knew, like, we thought we were going to be taking on this little boy who we knew the family, we knew the situation. And a lot of times in foster care, you get these children that you don't know, and you don't know their family, you don't know their history. And so that was kind of our experience going into foster care.
Yeah. So from the time you decided that you were going to start the classes until you finished training, how long did it take you?
So let's see, we went to our info meeting in October, the end of October, and we had just missed that class. And so we had to wait until January because they weren't doing any more classes through the holidays, like November and December.
Okay,
so
and
we actually had to
this
wait.
was pre-COVID, right? So you were in person. Okay.
Yeah, in person. And then we went into our classes. It was, for us, I don't know about you, but it was like 6 weeks. We had to go 2 days a week for like 3 hours each, I think.
Yeah.
Is how we did it, and it was in person. And then what was I going to say?
After your classes, did you have to do anything?
Oh, we did our home study. So you have to do a home study, which is way more simple and easier than I thought. Did you think that?
Well, ours hasn't been done yet. Like,
Okay,
that's what we're waiting for. And honestly, it kind of scares me because it's so intimidating. Like, they come into your home, and I feel like they're going to come into my home and tell me everything that's wrong with it. And I feel like it's going to take a super long time. Like, they give you a list of things that they require and that they look for. And so I've done all of those things, but it's still really intimidating. So tell me about your home study.
So our home study, we actually were moving like right in the middle of doing our foster care classes. So that was kind of a mess. But once we got moved into our new place, that's when we started our home study. And it actually isn't as scary. I don't know. Like, a lot of things they're checking for are, do your smoke detectors work? If you have a pool or any source of body of water in your yard or your property, it has to be enclosed. Like, they're all requirements for children's safety. So when you think about that, it's not too scary.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before, and I've said this before. All of the trainings and even the home study, like, to have a fire extinguisher in your home, or we have a upstairs, a middle floor, and a basement, and we have to have a secondary access, like exit, from our top floor. So in case our stairwell is on fire, you have to have another exit point that everyone can get out safely. And I didn't. And so I had to buy this ladder that you can hook out a window, which I'm like, that is so smart. Like, everybody should have these things already.
Yeah.
And so even the foster care classes, like, we'll get into that a little bit later, but everything, I'm like, that is so smart. Like, every home should have this. And I was watching this other YouTube that they said these what do they call them? Who comes in and does your home study? What are they? The caseworker?
We had a social worker, so she doesn't actually manage our cases, but I don't know if Utah's the same.
Well, I don't know. But anyway, they come in and they want you to succeed, right? Like, they want you. And so they're not, in my head, I'm like, they're going to come in and they're going to be so mean and they're going to tell me, you know, like, drill sergeant kind of stuff. But from what this other girl said, like, they come in and they're so nice and they want you to succeed. And so it's actually not that scary.
Yeah. I think it's just human nature to be vulnerable when you're letting people into your home and they're
judging
like,
your home.
Yeah. But really, they're just there to make sure that your home is a safe place for these kids to go. Your medicine has to be locked up or like out of reach, which it should be anyways from your kids, right? And so I think a lot of people, that scares them when they hear like, oh, you have to have a home inspection, but really it's just a checklist of safety precautions for these kids that they're going to allow in your home.
Yeah. Okay, so they give us a check sheet. So I'm assuming before yours came, you had everything done.
Yeah.
On your checklist. So when they came in and they were checking for anything, was there anything additional that they said needed to be done that wasn't on the list?
So we live in an older home and it's kind of split level. We have a main living area and then an addition, but you step down into it. And they classified that as a different level. And so we had to have a smoke alarm on that level. But like, it was an easy fix. you go out and you buy a smoke detector.
But that was about it. So everything on that list is basically everything they check for.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, because I was like, I'm going to have everything done on this list, and then they're going to come in and be like, nope, 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 nope. So once you passed the home study, how long until you got your certification and then you were able to get your first placement?
So, okay, we finished up classes, we did our home study, and that was all from about January to March. March, we finally got certified, and then we actually waited a whole year for our first placement.
Oh, really?
Which I was like devastated. You do these classes.
Was that your choice or their choice?
Their choice.
Okay.
Like, we had gotten 2 phone calls for teenagers. One was respite, one was a placement that we just didn't feel like would fit our home, which it's so sad to be like, no, this isn't going to work for us, but you're caring for these children and you have to like make sure that you're able to. Yeah. And one of the placements that we said no to was a teenage boy who had shown aggression towards animals. And we, at the time, had 3 dogs. And so it's kind of like, well, you can't allow that. Right. I don't know. It's
kind
hard.
of a hard thing, because when you come into foster care, they ask you, you have a part of your packet, they ask you this whole list of questions of what you're comfortable with as far as mentally, emotionally, physically, gender, ages, race. Like, they ask you everything that you're open to, and you really have to take into consideration where you are at in your life, your home, your other children if you have any, and pets. And it seems kind of mean to say no, but let's say, for example, you know, we get a call that he's abusive to other children. I don't want to put my children at risk, just like you didn't want your dogs to be at risk. And so you do have to evaluate those. But I think something that helped me was they will find somebody for that child. It's not like that child is just going to be left on the street. So they will find somebody, and I feel like it's okay to say no. And it seems mean.
And it feels like, I remember I just kept questioning, like, should we have taken him? Should we have taken him? But
who knows, if you would have taken him and it was a terrible experience, maybe it would have turned you off to everything.
And that's another thing that I've learned with foster care, like, really listen to what you're feeling when you do get a placement call, because if you feel like, yes, I'm supposed to, then you know that you want to take them.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me about, so the first one that you initially went into foster care fell through. And then after you got your first placements, tell me all of your placements, and we can't say, you know, names or anything like that for confidentiality, but tell me your placements that you've had so far.
Okay, so a year after we had gotten licensed, my husband and I actually like argued over, so every year you have to relicense with your state, right? Is that how it is for Utah? Because that's how it is for Idaho. Every year. And you also have to do continuing education, which is super easy. You can do any type of continuing education on child behavior, any child education.
Just on your own, and then you just report it?
Yeah, so like books, YouTube, like anything learning about kids counts as your continuing education.
So you don't have to physically go to more classes?
No.
Okay.
So we had come up on a year, and I was kind of just in a place where I was like, we went a whole year and I don't feel like we were really needed. Like, let's just not re-license. And my husband was like, no.
We did all of this. We're going to keep it.
I think he was like, we literally did all this work. Like, we're going to keep doing it. And then, funny story. So we had our social worker come out on a Monday, and on a Wednesday we got a phone call for 3 siblings, and those kids were our first placement. We actually still have them, so we're coming up on 2 years, which I'll get into that a little bit more about why, the timeline. But it was just, I don't know, that phone call was like, okay, we are needed.
Like validation of like, okay, yes, let's keep going.
And so they are Native American. When they came, they were 10 and 8. So let me back up, 3 of them. So the oldest was 10, and then there were twins, boy and girl, and they were 8. And I had no hesitation. I was just like, yeah, we'll take them.
And this is what we've been waiting for.
Yeah. And originally when we got into foster care, we only wanted to do little kids. And I feel like that's pretty common. You know, like you want ages 0 to 3. That's what we were set up for.
Yep.
So, but I don't know why, but when we got that phone call, I was just like, yeah, let's take them. Right. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So I called my husband. I was at work. I called my husband and I'm like, they're bringing us 3 kids. I need you to go buy beds.
Because you didn't have beds.
Like, we didn't have beds for them. And so he went, and him and his dad went and bought beds. And my mother-in-law was so nice to run and buy sheets while I finished up my last client. And they were at our house within an hour and a half.
That's quick.
Yeah.
So usually when they call you, how much time do you have to tell them yes or no?
Okay, so in my experience, if you tell them, like, hey, I need to call my husband or spouse, they will continue calling down the list.
Okay, so it's not like
they
just
don't, like, wait
it.
for you. No,
Okay.
Because as a social worker, as a caseworker, they're trying to find these kids a home, and so they're not going to wait around.
Right. They need to find someone as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you still have those kids today, and we'll get into that a little bit. And then when did you get your next phone call?
So we got our next phone call. Okay, so that happened in March. We got our next phone call in December for a little girl who they had found in a meth home. It was a drug bust. And she came really quick. She came within like 20 minutes.
And how old was she?
Okay, so she was 2 and she turned 3 2 days after she came to us.
Okay, so you had her for her birthday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which was like so fun.
I bet it was fun.
Yeah. A little girl.
Yeah, that's fun. Okay, and then how long did you have her?
So we had her for about 7 months. She went back home. She got reunified with her mom in June. It was the last day of June.
Okay. And when you get placements, do they, I've heard, but for the sake of this, do they tell you this is the plan and this is most likely, like reunification is most likely going to happen? Or, I mean, how much information do they give you when you get a placement?
So reunification is always the goal. That's how it always starts out. Really, it doesn't matter unless a parent is being charged and will be in jail. Then it can change the case quite a bit. But in our case, she was not serving jail time, and so they start reunification process right away with visits, and they come up with a plan for the parent to follow, like what they need to do to be able to get custody back of their kids. And so does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Like reunification is always the plan, and then you have court dates every about 90 days, and that kind of goes along with the plan, and then you kind of know if the parent is like following the plan or not.
And that can change, like it could change, like if they're not following the plan for so long, it could change whether reunification is still the goal or adoption is the goal.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the questions was, how do you not have attachment to these kids? Because I think it's harder if you don't know if they're gonna get reunified with their parents. But with her, reunification was the goal from the very beginning. So was it easier to send her back with her mom, or how do you deal with that emotional attachment?
It was really hard.
Even though you knew reunification was the plan.
So basically we just get attached.
Yeah. Well, they're little kids. How do you not?
Yeah, like this little 2-year-old girl that came and later, like 2 days later, turned 3. I mean, you get attached to these kids. Like, they have no one. They have nothing. And you're basically their full-time caregiver at that point.
Like, you accept them as your own. Yep.
And so we, like, fell in love with her. But she deserves, like, all the love. These kids have been through a pretty traumatizing experience being removed from their home.
Yep.
And so they deserve all the love and attachment. And our families get really attached to these kids. But
But I
they
think
know.
that's good because then they have all these people that love them. I read on another foster mom, I can't remember her Instagram handle right now, but she did a question and answer, and one of them, her response was perfect, I felt like, because she said, if attachment is what's stopping you from foster care, then don't do it, because you are going to get attached to every single kid. But here's the thing is, if your neighbor 2 doors down was, for some reason could not take care of their kids, would you say, no, I'm not taking your kids, even though they're right there? No, I'm not going to take them because I'm going to get attached to them. No, you would want to take them in and give them a safe and loving home. So I feel like in this situation, you just have to know that you're going to get attached and love them through it and love them anyway, because just saying no because you're afraid of getting attached, then don't do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to get attached.
And the more you learn about children, the more they need that attachment to develop.
Right, mentally. Because a lot of times they don't have that emotional attachment.
Babies need to be held.
Yes.
Kids need to be
that
loved.
to develop mentally correctly. They need that attachment. They need to be held because more than likely they didn't get that at home. Yeah. So that helps their developmental, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their development.
Yes. Yeah. Simplified. Okay. So you had her for how long? 7 months?
About 7 months, yeah.
Okay. So then after she got reunified, then what was your next placement?
So we actually got the 2 little boys while we had our other 4. We had 6 kids at once, which was crazy.
So you had 3 different placements at one time, and it was 6 kids all at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a little chaotic, but it was fun.
So you got the boys and still had the little girl. So how long did you have the little girl and the boys at the same time?
So the little boys came the beginning of April, and she left the end of June.
Okay, so not super long.
3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me the 2 little boys stories.
So the 2 little boys, we actually were their 4th home.
And why does that happen?
That happens in this case. I mean, it can happen for a lot of reasons, but in this case, they went to a home for the weekend after they were removed, and then they were placed with a family that a couple months later had decided to take a job offer in Texas, so they moved state, and you can't take them with you. Yeah, and so then they had moved them with a couple to a different city, and that couple, their license was coming up to be expired, and they decided, they were an older couple, they had kids and grandkids, and they decided, we're not going to continue our licensing. Okay. And so then at that point we had gotten a phone call. And I
How did Kate feel about that one?
I didn't even tell him. I just told the caseworker, I was like, my husband will kill me, but I'll talk to him. And then I didn't even dare talk to him. I was like, I just kind of left her hanging. And then she called me back and she was like, how would you feel about just having him for a weekend and seeing how it goes? And I was like, yeah, okay. Well, that was Easter weekend. My husband was working. He kind of works this weird rotation schedule. So that left me home all weekend with 6 kids.
With 6 kids by
myself. And so I kind of selfishly thought, well, he won't even be home, so I'm not even going to ask him.
Because you're just going to take care of him, and his opinion doesn't matter.
So I told the caseworker, I was like, yeah, sure. But back up, actually. So 2 weeks after they had been removed, and they were placed with their first foster mom, I kind of knew her through the community and had babysat these 2 little boys.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, no, it was for a day. And so they had come into our home, so I kind of knew who the boys were when she called. And so Kai was the same age as our little girl that was placed with us, and they did not get along.
Okay.
They were at each other.
Okay.
The one day that I watched them. So at first I was kind of I just don't know if I can do it. But then for the weekend I was like, you know what? It's a holiday weekend. Let's just take them and make it fun. Mm-hmm. We took them to an Easter egg hunt, and it was a lot of fun. But after that, I talked to my husband, and he was like, I just don't think we can do 6 kids. But in my heart, I was like, no, I think these kids are supposed to be in our home. Mm-hmm. You take them in, and the weekend went really great. it was really good, and I did it by myself, and I was like, yeah, I can do this. It's fine.
Yeah.
But I just kept feeling like these boys are supposed to be in our home. Like, there's a reason that they called us.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of this process, you have to go with your intuition, because it would be so easy to just say yes or no based off of your circumstance. But
Yeah, like
a lot
6
of these
kids.
kids, like, they need to be with certain people, and you have to listen to that intuition.
Yeah. So then I asked Caden, I was like, I really think we should, or I asked him, and he was like, I just don't think so. And I was like, well, I think we need to take them. So I called up my mom, and we drove to Pocatello to get these boys and all the stuff that belonged to them and brought them home. And my husband was like, I don't know what you're doing, but you're literally like crazy. He went to work and was joking with people. He's like, my wife just keeps bringing these kids home. She's like the crazy cat lady, but with kids. And I'm like,
I'll take them.
yeah.
That's
I
funny.
mean, 9 years of infertility will like make you
and then now you
desperate.
have a full house and it feels good. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll get into their story a little bit later. So one of the questions I have is, do you have a relationship with any or all of your foster care's biological parents? Because you have to do weekly visits. These kids, by law, have to have weekly visits with their biological parents if they're able. So, and I know for me, having a relationship with these people that you kind of know their story can kind of be intimidating, and it can be a little scary, but I've also heard like they need to know you and they need to know your situation. So tell me your relationship with any of the biological parents of the kids that you have.
So our first set of siblings that came, it was actually kind of crazy. So they came the week before COVID shut down.
Okay.
And at that point they had closed in-person visitation. So they were only doing either video conferences or just a phone call.
Okay.
Visitation. And there were a couple times that they had set it up that the dad did not show up. So these kids were removed from their dad. Their mom wasn't in the picture.
Okay.
And so that was kind of hard because these kids came and didn't have any contact with their dad. And they didn't understand like why their dad
just didn't show up.
Yeah. And that was hard.
That is hard. Because you get them like excited. It's like if you tell your kids like, oh, we're going to go bowling.
Yeah.
And then you're like, no, we're not going to go. Like, I mean, that's kind of a poor comparison, but they're excited to see their parents, and then their parents just don't show up. That can be another emotional thing that these kids have to go through.
Yeah. And our oldest, she was 10. She really had questions for her dad. Like she didn't understand why they were living in a stranger's home, like why they were removed. And it's hard because as a foster parent, you really don't get all the details at first.
Yeah.
And so you don't really know what to tell these kids because you're just like, well, your parents have some things that they need to take care of and straighten out before you can go back home. And so
and you try to have
hard.
to like stay positive and yeah, that would be really
and
hard.
not feel like the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like you're keeping them from seeing their parents.
Yeah.
So that was kind of our experience. And then unfortunately, after a month and a half had passed and the kids had been in our care, their father passed away. So we didn't have contact with him at all.
That's so sad.
It was really sad.
That's
it was really hard.
sad. And they couldn't even really say goodbye or anything.
No. So they were picked up from school the day that they were removed, and they never saw their dad after
That's
that.
so heartbreaking.
That it is, and it's hard to watch them process that loss. And
did they go to the funeral?
yes, we took them to the funeral. We felt like they needed to go to get that closure.
To say goodbye and have closure. And, oh, that's so heartbreaking.
So we didn't have much contact with their parents. But they had a cousin that came into the picture, and we did video calls with them, like FaceTime with them.
Because at this point, her plan was to take them. Yes.
Yeah. So when kids come into foster care, they are placed with a foster family if they are not able to locate a close family member. But then even after they're placed with a foster family, they will continue to search for family members to place them with if a family member is willing to take them.
Yeah.
So that was the case. She had come into the picture wanting to take these kids, and then they did phone calls with them and visitation over the phone with them.
And did they ever have a relationship with her prior, or?
So they had a relationship with her kids. So her kids, even though it was their cousin, they were the same age.
Yeah. So she's old. She's way older than them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and we still have a relationship with
And
her.
is that still her plan, is to take them?
As of right now, yes. It's just where they're Native American, it's kind of made this all the more complex.
Native American culture, they are very against kids being placed with anyone that is not Native American, correct?
Yeah.
And these, from what you've told me, we've had conversations like these kids love you and they want to be in your home. And that's just unfortunately not an option, right?
Yeah.
Which is sad because
Really.
they finally have this loving and stable home, and because of their culture, which that's okay, that's their culture, and you have to respect that, but it's sad for the kids' sake because
Right.
if they don't have anybody to go to, then what other option do they have? Do they go back to an orphanage on the reserve?
If this family member doesn't take them, then yeah, they will.
Yeah, that's so hard.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about the boys and tell me about their parents.
Okay, so the boys were also removed from a drug bust, and they were around hardcore drugs. Kai and Mac are their names. So Kai is 4 and Mac just turned 2. And we just adopted them last week. So I can
So
share
she can say their
yes.
names.
So I can share their names and a little bit of their story. But yeah, so they came from a really rough situation. They had lesbian moms. And so there was a sperm donor involved, which kind of made their case a little more complex because they had to terminate rights from birth mom and sperm donor, who was
Because he
not,
didn't want anything to do with them.
yeah, who was not involved.
Not in the picture at all.
Yeah, he wasn't in the picture as a father, but legally he
has to have the option.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he had legal rights to them because it was not a legal sperm donor
They didn't
situation.
do it the legal way.
Yeah. Yeah. So they came to us. We had a few visits with mom, both moms actually, so birth mom, and you could tell that they were heavy drug users. It was very apparent.
So hang on, back up a
okay.
little bit. When they got taken, tell that whole story of how they found these kids.
Okay, so Kai was found roaming the halls of a hotel.
And he was how old?
He would have been 3 at the time.
Okay. Just roaming the halls of a hotel.
And so they started checking rooms for parents, and then they couldn't find who he belonged to. So then they started checking non-reserved rooms and found a whole bunch of drugs with these 2 kids in there. And the parents were non-coherent at the time of
Just
removal.
Passed out.
Yeah.
And oh, that's so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Okay. So then they got taken and placed with the previous and then ended up with you. Then you did visitation for how long?
So we had scheduled visits every week from April all the way until we adopted the boys. But they only showed up about 3 times. So they were in and out of jail because of drug usage and whatever charges they were facing. And so it was kind of hard to get in contact with them a lot of the times. And they have someone that sets up these meetings. Like, you don't coordinate with the parents when
It's all
and
just
where.
set up for
yeah.
you.
Yeah, they have either the caseworker or they will hire it out to a third party, which is what they did in this case. A third party came in and like set up the meeting, set up transportation, and did all of that. So they showed up about 3 times is all. And then on the last time let me back up. So their birth mom actually passed away
From an overdose?
From an overdose. I'm not sure how many months they had been with us. About 7 months.
Okay.
So we took them to that funeral. And
they're
that
little
doesn't happen
enough.
a lot. I feel like when I was talking to the caseworker, this doesn't happen.
Because now you've been to 2 funerals.
Yeah.
But they were little enough. Did they really even understand what was going on?
Kai a little bit. Like, he knew his mom's body was there. They told him that she was sleeping.
He was how old?
He would have been
3? 4?
Let me think. 3.
3.
Yeah. So he had his birthday after.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So she was no longer in the picture, and then they terminated rights from the sperm donor, and then we were able to adopt.
Because the other mom,
she didn't have legal
married,
rights.
no legal rights, so she didn't even have the option.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
And then we skipped this one, but tell me about the little girl's parents.
So her mom was in the picture. From what we knew, they had a restraining order against her birth dad, so they were not in contact with him. And she was a little crazy. I mean, everyone's crazy, but I don't know. She didn't understand why her daughter was removed from her, and that was kind of hard because it's like, well, you're using drugs and your child is being neglected. I mean, this little girl showed up at our house in the middle of winter. It was December, with a shirt and a diaper on. No socks, no shoes, no coat, nothing. Her hair, we had to condition it 5 times to get all the knots out of her hair. She had burn marks all over her body, which
So sad.
I mean, her mom never really wanted to say, but we think it was from like they were cigarette burns. Yeah, so that's kind of her story. I did have a little bit of contact with her mom, but it did not end well. She just, in her mind, like, I was the bad person. Like, I had taken in her daughter and combed her hair and dressed her, and that was offensive to her.
Which is a really weird concept.
Yeah.
That
but
someone
also
is taking
typical.
care of your child and you're mad about it. It's a very weird concept.
It's kind of their way of being insecure about their ability to care for their child, though. Yeah.
They don't want to appear as a bad mom.
Or incompetent.
Yeah, and they feel like they are taking care of them in their own way. Even though it's probably not the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then she had reunification. Okay. And is that a hard, because I think one of the hardest things for me would be to know that one of the kids that I have, and really you grow this attachment to, is going back to a hard situation. Even though like the state has their checks and balances, like they will make sure that reunification is safe for the child. Even if you still kind of know the situation, it can still be really hard knowing that they're going back to not the greatest situation, even though reunification is the goal. I think that would be one of the hardest things, knowing that she's going back to like the same environment.
I guess you hope that things have changed really enough for this child to go back. And there are a lot of precautions.
Yeah, they would have to at least some.
They have to have a home inspection for their child to go back to living with them. They have to, they're essentially given a list of things that they have to do.
And check off.
So for this little girl's mom, she was required to go to counseling to help work through some of the things that were hard for her, and which led her to drug usage. And she had to provide a home. She had to provide income for her child, which she was actually put on disability, so she didn't have to get a job, but she did have to verify,
Income
that she could
somehow.
support her child. So it's hard. You hope that they're going back to a better situation and that
they're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
That's hard. Okay, so now let's go back to the twins. So tell us about your adoption day, because that was so awesome. It was just recent. She just had it.
Yeah. So we adopted the 2 little boys on February 17th. So literally just last week. Yeah.
It's so exciting. I was so happy for you.
It was such a good day. It was so hard for our other kids though, and I feel like it kind of was hard
because they wanted to be adopted and it wasn't happening for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I think they thought it would be different after we adopted the boys. And so it was a good day, but it was also like hard to enjoy a little bit. Like it was kind of a catch-22.
Yeah.
We were mourning that we were adopting these 2 little boys, and that was exciting, but our older kids were really sad about it.
Because they can't be.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so sad.
But all in all, it was a good day. We had a lot of family that came and supported us. My in-laws like rearranged their travel schedules to be there, which was
cool.
Awesome. And
that's such a good day.
Yeah. And it was.
And so, okay, so when you adopted them, can you change their names? Do they have to stay the same? And then as far as any communication with family, their prior family, that's done, right?
Yeah. So you can change their names. I feel like, okay, I don't know about in training, but like when we were doing our classes, they really stressed to not change children's identity. Did they kind of, did you get that?
Yeah, so in the videos, they did mention that. But I also had watched some other training videos that she said it depends on each situation. So your kids were young enough that when they came into your home, you automatically started calling one of them by their middle name, right? No.
So Kai's birth name was Lakai, but he went by Kai for short.
Kai. Okay. And so for him, like that's all he's really been known by. So in this video, she was saying, sometimes for older kids or even younger kids, their names can even be a trigger. So a trigger is something that brings back memories. It can be anything as like a smell or a certain store or a certain type of fabric or food. Like any of these things can be a trigger for these kids. And sometimes even their names are triggers. So depending on the situation, changing their name can be very beneficial because their name is a trigger. So I think every situation is very different, and I feel like that was a good change for him.
Yeah, and that's what he went by, so we just made it legal. We did change their middle names. We gave them middle names.
So tell me both of their names.
Okay, so Kai is Kai J. Roberts, and then Mac is Mac Jagger Roberts.
I love it. So cute. I love it. Okay, so a few other questions we had. Okay, so when foster placement comes in, tell me about any money that's immediately given to you and the stipend that you get every month.
Okay, so for Idaho, and this is what will change a little bit from state to state, I recently heard that Idaho was like the lowest paying state, so you'll probably be able to tell me.
Idaho.
So when they come in, you get like a 48-hour reimbursement, but reimbursement isn't like we had to buy beds. That's not a reimbursement item because you keep that when the kids leave.
It's not
like,
something
that's
that goes
yours. And so they will cover the cost of items needed, toothbrushes, deodorant, like hair stuff, clothing, underwear, diapers, formula. A lot of these kids will come with literally nothing. Like our 3 kids that came being picked up from school, they literally came with their backpacks and the clothes that they were wearing, and that was it.
Yeah.
So we had to buy underwear, we had to buy pajamas, clothing, like everything for them.
And so you said you get reimbursed, so they don't just give it to you, you just save receipts, and then they reimburse you for those things. Because when those kids leave, they will take those items with them. So so for example, let's say I get a newborn or a 2-year-old, and I have to go and let's say I get a girl. I don't have any girl clothes because I have 4 boys. So anything that I buy and want to be reimbursed for, those items have to go with the child when they go back, correct? If you're reimbursed for it.
Yes.
But if you don't ask for reimbursement, you can keep those items. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So like bedding, like all of that stuff that we weren't reimbursed for, we keep and then we just reuse for the next child.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so do you take the kids to doctor's appointments, and are they on you, like, do you put them on your insurance or do they have their own?
Yes, I call and I make doctor's appointments, dentist appointments. So, and I don't know if this is the same for Utah, but in Idaho, when a child goes into foster care, you take them in for a well check.
And it has to be within 48
Ours,
hours
I think, is 72. You have 3 days.
Within 3 days.
And that is just to document, like, basically the physical care that they came, or the physical
shape that they're in.
Yes, that they came into foster care, so it's documented.
Okay.
And then you'll document, like, any scars, any bruises, like any markings on their body.
Yeah. Right when they come in. Okay.
And then so you take them to the doctor, you take them to the dentist, they get all of that documented, and then they are on Medicaid.
Okay.
So it's all covered.
Yeah. So you don't have to pay for anything because they have their own insurance through Medicaid. Okay. And then as far as doctor's appointments, like all of that, you don't have to get permission to take them. But if it's some larger surgery or something even more, do you have to get approval, or do you just do it as you would your own child?
So you can take them in for any reason, make an appointment. If it's a specialist that you're taking them to, we have to get permission so that Medicaid will cover it. Okay. And for any type of surgery or anesthesia, yeah, you have to get permission from a parent or a caseworker and a supervisor.
Okay, so it can be approved.
So say like, okay, so when our older 3 came into foster care, they had some dental work that really needed to be done, and they were not able to get consent from a parent. So at that point, like, it is for their health benefit to take care of those things. The caseworker can go to her supervisor and basically lay out all the information, and then
they can approve or deny it.
Yes, without parent consent.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's see, we're almost done. One question that got asked is, can you be a foster parent if you are single and not married?
Yes.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So
it would be like really hard.
It would be really hard. I have this one friend, her name is Heather. She's awesome. She's single, and she took in 2 foster kids, and she actually just adopted them.
Really? That's awesome.
Well, I think it was in November, sometime, the end of last year. And yeah, she adopted them, and she was single. So yes, you can. Totally. It is hard because you're doing it all on your own, but it is possible, and you can do it. Let's see. How do you practice self-care and stay sane when you have 6 or 4 kids in your home?
I work part-time, and that's kind of my out.
Give you adult interaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same.
That's, for me, that's like my out.
Yeah.
Is to work.
Go to work. Well, and I think it's important because you enjoy your work, right? So you enjoy doing what you do. But I think it is very important. Like for me, I work from home. I have a business from home. I have 4 boys, and I have to do something to keep me sane. You have to refill your bucket.
You do.
You can't run on an empty bucket. So whether that is work that you enjoy, or going to get a pedicure, going to a movie, do something to refill your bucket. Yeah, I feel like that's super important.
And one thing too that I want to mention is, if you do work, they ask you your hours, and then that is covered by the state to provide daycare for you to work.
So you don't have to find daycare. They pay for daycare, which is super nice.
It is super nice.
Okay, so that kind of leads me into another question so let's say you're not working, so you don't need the daycare, but you go, I don't know, you go out on a date or you go and do things and you need someone to watch your kids. Who is allowed to watch these foster kids, and what's that process?
Okay, so, and this might change from state to state, but for Idaho, you can make the decision on who watches your kids or these kids, and it can be a family member. Anyone that you would trust to watch your biological kids can watch these kids. In Idaho, they cannot stay more than 24 hours without a background check.
Okay.
So, like, overnight,
they would have to have a background check. I think that's the same as in Utah, if I remember right. Or it can't be more than 5 hours a week. Something like that. Because I was thinking, well, I go to the gym for an hour a day. And if I have to send them to my mom, then she couldn't do that without a background check.
I don't know how Utah is, but you could definitely do that.
I'll have to look that up. I'll look that up.
In Idaho, it's like 24 consecutive hours.
Okay, but what if it's like 1 hour one day, 1 hour the next day? Do you know how many your limit is?
Is there a limit?
I think so, in the training. I'll look.
Okay.
I can't remember for sure, but I think, over a certain time. But so to become a foster parent, you have to have like an extensive background check done that they do on you. Is that background check the same for, like, let's say your mom or anybody that wants to watch them, or is it more of a simplified background check?
It's a simplified background check.
So how do they get that done?
We've never had to do one because we just always have our family.
That's nice.
Yeah. And we've never left our kids.
Oh, that's nice. I think somebody said it is more of just a simplified.
I think it's just a simplified one. Really, all they're checking is like, do these people that you're leaving these kids with, do they have a criminal history? I mean, we have to get fingerprinted, but like, you don't have to have them get fingerprinted
so
to watch.
It's just basic.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. I think I skipped a ton, but I feel like we did pretty good.
Yeah.
Good job. Well, thanks so much. I hope that this answered some questions. I know I will continue to have questions. I really wanted her to come because going into this, I feel like you have a million questions, and it's so fun to sit down with somebody who's done it and who's been there and who's doing it, and she's even adopted from the process. I know our goal is to adopt, but a lot of times people just want to foster and help kids along the way, so you can choose to adopt. You don't have to, but it's so fun because everybody's experience is so different. So it's just really nice to sit down and talk about it, and I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, see you guys.